Okay, so my name is Stefan. I've been at Sellercloud for almost 4 years. Today I will present you the updates to the Sellercloud API, the REST one. You might be asking yourself, why is not a developer presenting this topic? And I'll tell you why. It's simply because it's not that complicated. We do have over 200 API calls available at the moment, and we have more than 250 clients using the REST API. A lot of the calls, I guess, if you're using the API you're familiar with, might not be a surprise. The ones that you're seeing here, you could update the packaging configuration and add tracking info for multiple different packages. You can connect to third-party shipping systems, update physical inventory, creating orders, purchase orders, updating them, and so on. The user permissions for the REST API, they are managed in the Delta user interface. We do recommend using a separate user for each different API integration that you might have, because it's easier to monitor the different calls, and it's a way to restrict different endpoints and allow access to only specific parts of the software. We have utilized Swagger to provide visual interactive documentation for our API. You can access the Swagger documentation by appending the /Swagger to the end of your REST API endpoint, and you can open that in any browser. Here's a short video in which we show how a user gets authenticated, and then we make a code to specific order and the related details. So it requires a username and password. This generates the access token, which we then use to authenticate on the top. The get order API call. Using the company ID and the order status as a parameter. And then we get the order response with all the related order information. In the past, we've had a per employee REST API call log page accessible via the details page of each employee. This is the way it used to look. You would go to the Manage Employees tab, you would open up the specific employee, and then go to the REST API logs to see all the logs they made. You could add some filters, successful or unsuccessful calls. And that was pretty much the information you could get, the request and response as well. In an effort to making viewing the API logs more accessible, we've recently added a page to view all API calls made by all account employees in your Sellercloud account. As you can see here, you can filter out by users, status code, date, successful, the HTTP method, the endpoints, and so on. This way, it's easier to have everything in one place, and you can find what you're looking for. In the last year, we've added many new order-related REST API endpoints, including endpoints for splitting orders, setting order packages and their contents. This means that we currently have support for managing the entire order lifecycle via the REST API. You can use the REST API to create an order, mark the order as paid, split it, update the package contents, update the serial number for the items, pull a packing slip for the order, and mark the order as shipped with a multi-package support. You can also update the order custom columns, both for single ones and multiple columns at once. We've also added the endpoint for managing manual reserves. As you can see, they're pretty self-explanatory. Getting the value of manual reserves, creating the manual reserves, and also deleting the manual reserves. which can help you with inventory management significantly if you don't have all the orders in Sellercloud. We've also added several endpoints for managing purchase orders via API. You can now pull purchase orders using a save view. You can also update serial numbers to recently received purchase orders, as well as split the purchase orders again via API. And lastly, you can also delete purchase order items via the API. A few things that are good to know is that you could execute a task via the API and track its progress. And another thing that you might want to consider is giving an employee access to the REST API only and not to the user interface. This way, obviously, they can access the data that you've allowed them to, but at least they won't be able to see it in the user interface if you want to restrict them for that. And that was my short presentation. Thank you for your time.